You're listening to the Long Game Podcast with Sandra Scaiano. In a world where everyone is doing, it's easy to get lost in a sea of comparison, secret tricks, and promises of overnight success. The long game is my approach to business. The actual day in and day out philosophy that you have to show up, you have to do the work, and there's no quick fixes for long-term success. I'm a web designer, digital strategist, and energetic thinker, and I'm here to share the process and lessons I experience with my clients daily who are going through the same struggles of building a business as you are. We'll hear from successful entrepreneurs sharing their long game strategies, and I'm fun, so we're going to have a little fun along the way too. Thanks for being here. Let's get to today's episode. Hey guys, welcome to the very first episode of the Long Game Podcast. This podcast has been brewing for over a year. And to be honest, it actually was going to be an Alexa flash briefing, which if you don't know, they are, short daily mini podcasts for the Alexa app and those devices. And I loved that idea. Like for me, it was no big pressure, just a short sharing of my ideas and some consistent content creation. But as the year passed and we landed in 2020, something shifted within me and something shifted within my work. I turned a corner. I really was able to recognize the value of what I have to contribute. And all of this buildup for the past 10 years rushed forward all at once. So I knew I needed to express myself and share my ideas and my knowledge in a way to reach the most people. So the idea changed to podcast, and here we are. Some may call it the universe, or kismet, or destiny, timing, even luck. To me, it's the long game. It's setting yourself up for the next step, which you most likely don't even know what that is, but when it appears, it's just right. It's doing your day-to-day preparations so you are ready for the opportunity when it presents itself. In long game thinking, you can have an idea, spend an entire year ruminating about it, and then have an epiphany and begin to act, pulling the pieces together so quickly and so certainly. And that's why this podcast is happening right now. I was gearing up for a weekend away with my group coaching. Let me ask, are you guys working with a coach or working with a group of friends in a mastermind type setting? These type of situations help with your ideas and hold you accountable. I think it's a must for entrepreneurs. I consider this my self-care time for my business. And just as important as self-care is for your body, mind, soul, well, working with a coach and within a group has those same effects on me for my business. It allows me to flow, to be supported in a number of ways, and to nourish my mindset. And coaching and masterminds are an investment in your business, and this is long game mentality. I get bootstrapping, and in my work, I am very conscious about spending other people's money. But part of the long game approach is knowing when it's time to invest, when it's time to spend to create the system so that you can make more in the future and handle the flow of clients and business and orders. So the theme of that retreat was content creation, and I had already flipped the switch on my idea to do a podcast just before the trip, so I was ready to be inspired and ready to work with the group and get to a place of creation. And it did not disappoint. Getting out of your own space has a way of bringing on creativity. I remember hearing about women I know who would rent a hotel room for a few days just to get out of the house, get out of the routine when they needed to create, when they needed to focus on course creation or book writing. One mentor would head to the beach and just change her environment totally for a few days. Another grabbed a hotel room in her own city. That's what travel does to us. It takes us out of our comfort zone and shows us new things to look at that we can internalize and then apply to our everyday. So from the onset, I was ready. My mind was in a place to see, and I was ready to let the ideas come. So to have this place, this group to bounce ideas off of and get confirmation and even get validation on what I thought I wanted to do was huge. It was everything. Like from there, the ideas began to flow. Everything fell into place. I had a direction for this podcast. I was brainstorming content freely and with a viewpoint. I even visualized the perfect lead magnet for list building. So I'll have you know that for my business, that has been a huge sticking point for me. I know what people want from me, and they don't want it in a PDF. So to think of something that felt good for list building in 10 years, that was a win. And that's how things work. Prep and surges forward. And surging forward all the time can equal to exhaustion, though. So the long game approach is about ebbs and flows and always having some forward motion, but not always at the same rate. And this is how I've created my business and how I work with my clients to develop theirs. Consistency in anything that you do yields better results. From practicing yoga to perfecting your grandma's Sunday sauce to content creation. And I've found in my business that, I've been servicing others with my ideas and action, and then I really haven't been using and putting that same focus for myself. So this is a time for me to be consistent in something other than the work. And I was listening to this podcast recently with a female entrepreneur who I'm super interested in. And the interviewer asked her to share her story, and she proceeded to use the entire podcast to walk through every bullet point on her resume. And it took me from interested to meh. So I'm not going to do that to you guys. I'm going to just give you a quick 2 minutes on my background so you know a little bit about me. I was in PR and marketing, in fashion, particularly streetwear and pop culture for 20 years in New York City. The long game lesson started back then with my front row seat to billion-dollar business building. These type of startup companies, they ran lean. And a lot of times it was just me, myself, and I handling everything in the marketing role. And the shit that went down was crazy because there was boys club thinking and no HR. It was kids running companies on their ideas, and people with resources were investing in music to be the next big fashion hit. But the go with your creative ideas lesson I learned back then. During my hip hop streetwear days, I produced fashion shows for brands who would walk the New York Fashion Week all the way down to Urban Fashion Week. And this one in particular was a little cheesy and regional, but I showed up always. And we were in Miami, and we were going to have the best fashion show of the week. There was this closing look to the collection, a powder blue, also known as NC State blue, pleather ensemble. It was denim jacket styling with the brand's moniker, a bulldog, on the back in shiny cream. There were powder blue matching pleather pants. And of course, it was worn without a shirt, just abs. I had an idea to rent a bulldog to walk down the runway with the finale look. Great idea until discovering the cost of the bulldog plus trainer for the required hours was thousands. Not happening for the little brand living amongst the big guy's budget. But it was the idea though. And I knew it was. And I was a little crushed knowing what was left in my show budget. So I took a break, I headed to the beach, and I was breathing in the Atlantic air, and I was exhaling out my frustration that I wanted to go the extra mile and make this happen, but the boss didn't. So as I headed back up to the street, I saw a woman walking what appeared to be a bulldog. And I sprinted towards her, stopping her right then and there. And it was a bulldog, and it was about a year old. It was super cute. And the woman was down to earth and approachable and just super cool. So I explained the situation to her, and I offered her what was left in my budget in cash to show up and let us walk her dog down the runway. And we shook on it. It was a deal. Show up at the venue at 5 p.m. And she did. She showed up with the dog at 5 p.m. and my heart was a flurry. And I have to actually say, the retelling of this story and rethinking about it, it got me all going again. And her pup was backstage, and she was backstage, and the pup was meeting the models. And I just couldn't believe this. I made this happen, and I explained everything to the boss, that I pulled this together and that I needed the cash, and everything was going well. The show started, the venue was packed with guests and press, and I stood next to the company owner watching models one by one come down the runway. And then I noticed that the runway was about face height to the seated guests. And I had a holy shit, what have I done moment. What if this dog gets spooked by the music and the lights and lunges at someone? I didn't know this dog. It's not a trained professional. So many thoughts raced through my mind. This is crazy. And I was just standing there knowing that this was either going to be the best or the worst day of my life. So the finale look comes down the runway, model walking dog, People are wooing and clapping. Model turns at the end of the runway, leash in hand, and gives the back jacket money shot of the shiny bulldog. It was pretty spectacular. I exhaled, and I knew it was right. After the show, a reporter comes up to me to get more information about the brand. The New York Times. I was always barking up their fashion reporter's tree with the big names that I worked with, but this little brand made an impact. And a 5x7 photo of the powder blue leather outfit walking the bulldog was the only photo included in the article on streetwear fashion. Can I say this again? A freaking 5x7 photo in the New York Times. So take risks, follow your creative ideas. They separate you and make you stand out. This was a foundational lesson in the long game approach. I had prepped, I was ready, and then I seized an opportunity. Fast forward many years to how I got to this mic right now. I was working in pop culture for an agency as the managing director, managing the sales team and making strategies for the biggest names in consumer products, financial services, etc. I was 9 months pregnant and the business closed. And I'm going to share this full story on a later episode and the long game lesson I learned from that. But we closed on a Friday and I went into labor on a Monday. And it was dramatic. I mean, I remember being in the hospital bed telling my husband to call them to not cancel the health insurance so I could have health insurance for delivery. I was losing all my saved up vacation that I was using as maternity leave. And, I just didn't have a job to go back to. I mean, that was the plan, to go back to a job. So life as I know it started then. And I loved the strategy piece and I was good at it. And I decided to learn how to code then because my job was to make the strategy and then pass off the project to someone else to execute. So I really wanted to create the strategy and execute it going forward. And so I sat babe on boob at the counter in my Brooklyn apartment and started to learn HTML and CSS. And learning code took some reinforcing. But I knew that I wanted to do my own thing and that I was ready to lead myself. So it's been 10 years since those days. And I have focused my energy on working with entrepreneurs and small businesses. And I learned everything I could about not just websites and web design, but the customer journey and all the components that support digital marketing of brands. I take a holistic approach to branding where all of these pieces are considered when you're looking at it to create a plan. I also believe that business is about relationships. And the relationships that you have with your customers, your team, your industry, and more, that is what your business is. So many old school tactics still ring true. Like, just show up, do the work, be honorable, care about what you are doing and who you are doing it with. Because relationships develop over time, and that's the long game. The Long Game Podcast is about sharing all of this knowledge and the experiences I have firsthand with clients who I work with who are on the same journey to business building as you are. We're going to talk about overarching strategies plus actionable methods and ideas like content and keywords that you can implement into your business. And we're going to chat a lot about branding and knowing who you are and who your customers are, because it's that knowledge that helps you connect. We're going to go behind the scenes with the stories and solutions of other successful business owners who have taken the long game approach with their business. So thanks for listening, and I look forward to growing our relationship right here. Thanks for joining me today. You can access more info in the show notes at thelonggamepodcast.net. If today's show connected with you in some way, please share it with your friends or hop on iTunes and leave me a review. Until next time, keep playing the long game.